Blazing Dominion releases on May 8th. This set massively impacts the metagame, shifting the balance of what decks are even capable of vying for the top spot. I'm JaxLMS, and I know everything because they pay me to. Let's do something a little different. Fedrolis Harmonia is a level 7 dragon tuner that can chain to an opponent's monster effect on field to reveal itself from hand, and up to 5 synchro monsters from your extra to, don't get confused by the numbers, it's counting itself, summon itself if you revealed 1, mill one of the synchro monsters if it revealed 3, and pop a monster if it revealed all 5. But for the next turn cycle, you can't activate extra deck monsters aside from synchros. The history of Blazing Dominion format is also the history of the Calamity Fedrolis. There's no way to talk about this format without understanding the gravitational pull this card has on it. Being at its core sort of like a better Ghost Ogre, giving you a big tuner body and popping any monster, not just the one that activated, Harmonia is already a crazy good hand trap, even in a world where every synchro monster is Gaia Knight, the Force of Earth. But the fact is that they aren't, as my dogmatic and homie named Vsauce Mike would tell you. With the extra deck mill, you can add even more to that interaction point with picks like Malong for a simple bounce, or Packbit for his costlier but far more threatening push effect. 2 forms of removal on a single hand trap, one destructive but non-targeting, the other targeted but non-destructive, is a crazy buff to decks that can afford the lock, pushing synchro decks like Kewl Tune and Elfnote further than their new support alone would. But alongside synchro decks that simply don't care what's going on in their extra have made adaptations to work with this card as well. Pure Mitsurugi has gotten great results using Harmonia and a package of usually just the necessary 5 synchros, but also always including the late great Hannibal Arclight as an alternative mill that trades 1 removal for a search of either Habakiri or Ritual spell. Without this particular interaction, Mitsu doesn't have some special edge over other Fedrolis decks, but still has to sacrifice their flexibility with Link and Xyz plays for it. Although it is worth pointing out that after using Harmonia on your opponent's turn, the lock will wear off in your end phase, meaning that you still have the option to set up Link and Xyz disruptions for your opponent's turn, and with the addition of a level 7 tuner to your board, you can add things like Psychic and Punisher and Jiraishin to your extra deck options. Some decks, however, do still have a way to use Harmonia for consistency through Lulawa Lilith, getting you a Primera or Ecclesia in the end phase, and for more passive setup options, you can mill Omega or win Pegasus. This card has almost single-handedly started what is known in queuing as class warfare, dividing decks in the OCG between can and can't play Harmonia. Pure Mitsu and Kewl Tune have been pushed up to the top tables, while decks like the once so proud Draco Tail are left scrapping for their fucking lives. A hand trap this strong that can only be used by decks focused on one particular mechanic doesn't just warp the metagame, it alone decides what decks even enter the discussion. No pressure though. Kewl Tune Rotary is a level 1 Cyber's tuner that can use a tuner from hand, can reveal itself in another tuner from hand to normal summon a tuner, and when it's used as synchro material, either slips a card out of your opponent's grave, or takes a look at their hand, then searches a Kewl Tune back row. Kewl Tune Crackle is a synchro of Clip and more tuners that looks at the opponent's extra on summon and temporarily banishes a card from it, then gains attack, and when it's synced off, can come back and take 2 more. Kewl Tune Back 2 Back is a level 10 that requires a synchro monster, raises your opponent's levels by 2, lets tuners attack twice, and twice per turn in response to a monster effect can add back or reborn a tuner, then immediately synchro summon. This support fixes most of what was wrong with the initial release of Kewl Tune, cranking up the consistency, fine-tuning the card quality, and remastering the end board. Rotary makes Red Nova pretty much completely obsolete, being an even better one for Q to summon to bridge into more engine, and more importantly, one that you're far happier to draw. While drawing Red Nova was acceptable because of Kewl Tune's hand material gimmick, Rotary in hand helps you extend through your bodies being removed by letting you extra normal the names you searched. Replacing the biggest brick in the deck and making your normal summons more live is already a huge boon for the strategy. But what's more, it also increases your starter count by making Rico, which was once more of an engine requirement we were playing 3 of out of obligation, into nearly as good of a starter as Q, giving it a 1 to search with which to make Trackmaker. And that gives us a good jumping off point to talk about, what it actually does. When used to make Trackmaker, it not only doubles the amount of back row searches you get, letting you get JJ and Synchro, it also gives you perfect information, including the top deck with Q, letting you know if you need to do a nib line or just how to order your disruptions. And as for disruptions, I'm so fucking good at transition sentences. This is like my only skill. Rotary swiping something out of the trash is a novel addition to your material effects, but with its level being awkward for anything you'd want to quick sync into, and its effect playing the worst with the trigger effect timing, it feels the most like it's asking for the loudness war slot. Meanwhile, Crackle leans into the most frustrating parts of the deck by making your clip into 2 to 4 extra deck rips. Now equipped with better aim, you can hugely cut down your opponent's options anytime you resolve clip. And of course, course, Crackle's very existence makes your turn 0 plays much more consistent, going off with Clip and any 3, including Q and Ghost Girls, for a highly disruptive play. Its second effect not only lets you do the very same thing as the first effect in double time, it's also relevant that it comes back as a body, so after tuning it with a 5 into back-to-back, you'll immediately have a 5 back on board to make into Zaylin or Loudness War. And back-to-back is a huge addition to the board, both preserving the level fuckery of RS, but also giving you 2 more opportunities for quick synchros, further alleviating the pressure from Remix to always be ready to sync. Like Remix, reviving things like Mix and Trackmaker, and then syncing unrelated mats gets you good follow-up searches, but then having a second activation of back-to-back means you still get to use those strong material effects. Responding to a monster effect also gives you a great chance to fire Zaylin, assuming you can figure out what the prompts on EDO Pro mean. But another, not quite addition, but definitely improvement on your end board is the fact that with Rotary being a 3 of, you'll more often have the chance to use Q for some advanced techniques.
Overcrowded Anthem.
Okay, not that advanced. Now, we all know Q can summon Naturia Rose Whip, but what this video presupposes is maybe you didn't? What you can also do is summon a hand trap from deck, sack it for JJ, and then add it back with Remix, giving you consistent access to Ash Blossom or Harmonia. And in a format owned and operated by Harmonia, it's no surprise that a deck with a simple, non-invasive combo to search it has bubbled up to the top. Darkness Resonator can reveal to your opponent that, yeah, you're really doing this right now to summon itself from hand, gives you an extra normal of a Resonator, and can change any number of tuners you control to 1s. Power Vice Dragon can summon itself if your board is clear or only has Dark Synchros, searches a Resonator on summon but locks you, and gives battle protection to RDA. Fiend Peace Golem can summon itself if you control a Fiend tuner, can sculpt its level a bit on summon, and if it's sunk into the Man of the Hour or one of a much smaller group of his associated acts than you would assume, it can reborn a Fiend. Red Nova Dragon Assault Mode can banish itself until the end phase when your opponent activates an effect, to banish cards they control up to the number of tuners in grave, or his negate attack. Crimson Call adds a level 4 or lower Fiend back from grave or from deck if you control RDA, and can banish itself from grave to give RDA or an Assault Mode monster a second attack. Ruler's Rumbling counts up your opponent's summons, reborns a Dark Synchro if they've done 1, makes RDA unaffected for 3, books all your opponent's monsters on 5, and if they've hit 10 or more, they can't do shit about it. Crimson Blade Dragon is a level 7 that requires a Resonator, is treated as Crimson Blader for some reason. On summon, either adds or summons a level 8 or higher Nomi from deck or grave, and if it battles a big monster, can Catastor it. The Crimson King is a level 8 that requires a Dark, surges a friend of the show on summon, and when your opponent activates a monster effect, he can tag into an indestructible double attack RDA. And Red Hypernova Dragon is a synchro that requires 4 fucking tuners, gains 5 for each one in grave, can't be targeted, can't be destroyed, and as a quick effect, can banish itself and all cards from your opponent's field and grave, then summon Red Nova Dragon. It would seem the main mission statement behind this wave of support is giving RDA more ways to continue plays through its first starter being interrupted. Vice into Darkness gets you to a level 8 and an extra normal summon before even using your first normal summon, already giving you 2 easy built-in ways to extend. And being able to save at least 1 normal summon until after a synchro hits the field gives you the best chance yet of being able to resolve Chain Resonator, which you can search by using King to search Call. And saturating your board with Resonators via Chain and Crimson is a better strategy than ever before, because Darkness can smooth out your levels to use however many or few as you need to make all manner of hot reds or Nova Dragons while still getting the effects of whichever ones you want. And for further extension, Crimson Blade Dragon gives you consistent access to engines the deck already wanted to play. The Boo Tomato intended target is either just reborning a random synchro, or pivoting into the chill low investment assault mode package through his namesake, but it leaves room to grab Lubellion from deck and get your Bestial package online. Or Habakiri, I don't judge. The new additions to the ceiling are certainly interesting. Hypernova has some advantages over Supernova, not needing any particular timing so he can just blow up whenever he feels like it, and also immediately replacing himself with at least a big guy to swing for game with, unlike Supernova, which has to wait a whole turn cycle. But dedicating 5 whole bodies to it is so much investment when 4 was already pushing it. And the tag into Red Nova is so funny in context, knowing that what they want you to do is Hypernova banish goddamn everything, then make Red Nova Assault Mode to banish even more cards. Like, how many fucking banishes do you need, dude? The one that does interest me is, oddly enough, the King. Now, you may be wondering, how does Crimson King work? Like, okay, he erases timing, but what does that mean? Crimson King's quick tag into RDA is useful for two reasons. For one thing, it turns on Red Zone without having to leave RDA up in your own end phase, but also a simple effect that can chain to any monster effect gives you a good way to enable Zalen. Sadly, since this requires 2 whole synchro summons, there's no hope of getting this negate online within 5 summons. Try to Enneacraft XpPotions has the iconic bingo and counter effects of the level 1 crafts, the world famous special set effect of every craft, the patent pending flip up to search effect in response to an opponent's effect that sets a card, and the classic flip effect to pop a back row and then summon a monster from hand face down. Xuspira has all these common effects, which I'm sure most players have read, can flip up in response to an opponent's effect on chain length 3 or higher to negate and destroy all their effects in the chain, and after it's flipped up, your opponent cannot respond to their own effects. Reset places Enneacraft from deck or grave, or if you already have it, can negate a card or 2. And if your opponent activates something, you can banish it from grave to flip face-up Enneacrafts back down up to the number of scales you control. Enneacraft is a deck that tries to carve out an entirely different style of play within the game, imposing its own rules within its domain, and its shortcomings largely come from the parts of the game that its rules don't account for. Decks like Dracotail and Mitsurugi have simple techniques that can protect them from Ennea's sure hit effects. XpPotions and Xuspira both address these bad matchups, giving the deck ways to hit through the barriers your opponent can set up. XpPotions focuses mostly on the Dracotail matchup, being able to respond to any tail effect to set from deck, so you can pop the Ketu before it can be flipped up. Additionally, getting to set a craft from hand, likely the one you just searched with XpPotions, is a great way to extend the ceiling of your turn 1 plays against matchups where you can resolve his flip effect, even if it has to be manually with Reverse. Choosing a craft to include in your board after the matchup has already been revealed lets you pick disruptions and protections that best cover it, making this a great moment to set up Xuspira. Spia addresses the issue of chain blocking that normally gets in the way of activating your quick effects, knocking out the whole chain as punishment for trying to escape the craft's judgment. This can stop a whole army of Dracotails and the Arthalion they fused into all at once, not worrying about whether they ordered their effects to avoid XpPotions or Astapixia. What it can't do is stop a chain of only 2, but because craft flip effects almost always go on chain link 1, you can activate something like Tromaria in response to Rahu to put them in a position wherein they either activate all their effects and resolve none, or activate only one effect and secure the appropriate craft a guaranteed hit. Against Mitsurugi, you can use this plan to keep Murakuma from wiping your board, since they either get stopped by Spia or Arcatail. And while the threat of Spia is already enough to block you from building chains, forcing it out doesn't alleviate the problem because its continuous effect will simply ban you from doing it even if you want to. Reset is good because it takes on the burden of needing to be a 3-of from Enneapolis, and rewarding you for using it by giving you an extra activation of 1 or 2 crafts. It's a small bit unfortunate that its contingency effect for if you already have Enneapolis is unusable turn 1, because it feels a little unfairly punishing to not have a way to get it in grave when you're already suffering the consequences of drawing a bricky engine requirement. But regardless, these improvements gave the deck a real chance at finding a place in the metagame as a good rogue option. And then it fucking didn't. Clown Crew Biancaviso is a level 7 illusion that can be tribute summoned with a single Jimmy. Remember Jimmy? The song's about Jimmy. During your opponent's turn, it gives you a quick tribute summon, and when it's tribute summoned, either draws 1 for each tribute or negates a card for each tribute. Flare is a level 1 ritual that can reveal itself to search a Clown Crew card, then pitch a card, and if it's tributed, either shuffles back all rituals on field and in grave, or books a guy. Rehearsal tributes a monster from hand or field to search Biancaviso on a back row, and can bash itself from grave to ritual summon. Matinee Operatics can summon a Clown Crew from deck or extra every turn, but locks you out of activating any monster effect on the field of a monster summoned from deck or extra, and during the end phase draws a card for every kind of Jimmy you tributed this turn, then can set a back row from hand. Malabarism is a quick play that summons 2 with the same lock, and on a later turn can bash itself from grave and tribute a monster to bounce a card on the field. Soiree Operations either summons 2 or searches 1, then locks you, and can bash itself from grave to tribute summon. Can shuffle back 3 from grave or banish during the standby phase to draw a card, pops a back row for each tribute you use for a tribute summon, and if it hits the grave, can place itself on the field. Diabolo is a fusion of Mud Dragon materials that gives tribute summons piercing, and if it's tributed, either shuffles back all fusions or sets a Clown Crew trap from deck. Meteor is a generic 6 synchro that protects the summon window of your tribute summons, and when it's tributed, either shuffles back all synchros or adds back a Clown Crew card. And Fiends is a generic rank 3 that gives tribute summons $10, and when it's tributed, either shuffles Xyzes or sets a spell from deck. This deck's got a somewhat unique gameplay loop, but is going to need a little more something or another to keep up with the field. Rehearsal and Flare Searching It are both starters to get Biancaviso and Malabarism for tributes, and since Flare is a level 1 ritual, you can search it with Poissonniere, making Concours de Cuisine a starter as well that adds a pendulum to your potential tributes. Tributing over Fiends and Diabolo, either both for Bianca or leaving 1 for the ritual summon, will net you both Matinee and Soiree to get even more tribute summons and fodder. And Matinee's draws, which alongside the draws from Bianca and New Face, can frequently net you 5 or 6 extra cards cards in hand by the start of your opponent's main phase, with 1 or 2 more coming with the Bianca on your opponent's turn. And the draws with Matinee are a little more flexible than your average draws of this type, since the, I guess, Dust Tornado clause, is that the best we can do for a frame of reference, can forgive you for playing hand traps like Imperm that something like Heat Soul wouldn't have put up with. And the ways the deck can disrupt the opponent are actually pretty high impact. Each Jimmy can wipe out all the hard work your opponent put in thus far summoning their own Jimmies. So a board of just Malabarism to pick the tribute fodder you need after the matchup is revealed, and Soiree to search and then tribute summon Bianca Viso gives you a pretty big bomb to threaten your opponent with next to all your non-engine. Flair's Book of Moon is even more versatile, being something you can tribute over next to Devils or Meteor to block your opponent from rebuilding, and Meteor is good not only for recursion of your clowns, but also recursion of synchro monsters you may have milled with Harmonia. Keeping Harmonia with Malong online indefinitely is a pretty good perk for a deck trying to outgrind. But if I'm being honest with you, this is kind of where advantages cap out, because there's a lot wrong with the deck at present. All your guaranteed disruption coming in the form of trigger effects on 1 or 2 quick tribute summons is pretty rigid and makes a lot of assumptions about how your opponent's turn is going to play out. For one thing, the effects to shuffle back the different types of Jimmy relies on your opponent giving a fuck about them. I mean, take for example Dracotail. Dracotail famously couldn't give 2 halves of a crap about whether or not Arthalion stays on the field once he gets there. It's more about the journey than the destination. In quite a number of board states, shuffling back fusions does nothing but stop damage and recur your opponent's resources for them. The trigger effect negate on Bianca Viso can stop Arthalion if you timed it in response to the effect to fuse, but it can't stop Pan and Urgula from breaking the rest of your board, or any tail for that matter from setting Ketu and Rahu to just make more fusions. It's maybe better into Kewl Tune, which does care about keeping its bodies on board, but has the similar issue of not being able to stop the materials from getting to trigger. And the negate is even less useful since unlike fusion summons, you can't time it effectively against hard synchro summons. Try pulling this gimmick in the face of a Murakumo, see what happens. And I feel like it would just be mean to bring up the fact that they don't even have a Link yet to shuffle back Link decks. So as trite and reductive as it feels to say, I think the only thing this deck genuinely has going for it is being able to dig for and tribute summon vanities.
That's not funny.
Hecahands Monkeybuel is a level 6 illusion that can reveal itself from hand to fusion summon a Hecahands using itself, and if an illusion fusion hits the grave, it can add itself back to hand. Hecahands Bait is a continuous trap that can tribute either a Hecahand or a stolen monster to steal an opponent's monster, and during the end phase must sack a card you control. And Daedalus is a fusion of 2 Hecahands that can steal a monster and lets your Hecahands and stolen monsters attack directly. Well, trap wasn't kidding. These cards are bait. Another trap card is pretty much the last thing in the world this deck needed when the 2 existing trap cards are as strong as they are, while still having to justify their existence at every turn. Daedalus tries to pretend he's helping going second, as though we're going to be able to perform a fusion summon at all going second. Monkeybuel does assist with that since she can extend through Ibtel or Gygas being negated, so you can still get to Jawza. And honestly, you can use that in a Chimera build to bypass having to interact with the deck's gimmick at all, by searching Monkeybuel instead of Ibtel, cutting the Gygas brick, and hard fusing Monkeybuel with an illusion reborn by Baphomet. And I think that's maybe the greatest sin of this support. Not only do they not give the deck any more hope of being played pure, by trimming the package of cards needed for the engine, this wave of support somehow makes fewer Hecahands cards playable. Kind of a funny kick in the balls, eh? Predaplant joke I'm not allowed to make is a level 1 tuner that adds a Predap card on summon and can bash itself from grave to either place a Predator counter or reset Poly. Lilizard can summon itself if you control a Predaplant or Starving Venom, then search Poly, can make a monster on the field dark, and when it's reborn can draw a card. Princess Dracenna, the Thirsting Tree, is a level 1 plant tuner that can milk a low-level plant to summon itself and copy the level, and can bash itself and another plant from grave to summon a dragon from hand or grave. But both effects lock you. Primitive milks a Predap card to search a Poly or fusion, but locks you, and if a monster hits your opponent's field, you can bash it from grave to kill your own fusion. Super Duper Polymerization is an unrespondable normal spell that pays 2k to target a monster on the field, summon a monster from extra with the same type and attribute, then either fuse them or just kill the summoned monster. Predaplant Baltea is a level 4 synchro tuner that can reborn a Predaplant or Starving Venom on summon, and when a monster hits your opponent's field, it can bash itself in a Poly from grave to fusion summon. And Starving Venom Wing Dragon is a fusion of a fusion monster and a clear wing monster that can negate a monster on its way in the door once per turn, can chain to any effect on the field to pop a card, moves to the scale when it dies, and as a spell, places a Predator counter on every monster your opponent summons. A lot to talk about here because, as you may have noticed, this wave of support is absolutely massive. Primitive is a great starter for the deck, being able to simultaneously mill Biblisp for cost and search instant fusion. With Biblisp netting you a second search, you have the ability to hold the instant in hand, while your normal summon works to set up protection for it. Whether you started with Primitive, Longinophilia searching it, or Scorpio summoning Longinophilia, you can now get to Lilizard and use long to tune it into Baltea. Since his summon searches Poly and being reborn by Ball draws you a card, Lilizard further extends the options left uncommitted in your hand as you go down this line. With the 4 and the 3, you can make Bramble, which does threaten Black Rose and a reborn going second, but going first you can tag it out just to get that reborn for a level 1 tuner, so you can make Black Rose into Crystal Wing, which will be able to protect all the plays we can do with Instant and Poly. Dracaena does this line even more efficiently, getting you a free level 1 tuner and milling Byblisp herself to search Scorpio. The early Byblisp activation does require some rerouting since you won't be able to use it later to search Lilizard, so generally speaking you'll have to use him later in the turn and give up his draw. On the other hand, that does free up Primitive to mill Planning, which is part of a new layer of disruption the deck can put up in the grave. With Baltea, you can respond to any summon with a fusion that at the very minimum will trigger Planning to pop, but it also lets you turn your used interruptions on board into bigger fusions like Predapower or extra Dragostopelias. But if you've been through all those already, you can also just make Starving Venom, and then later in the turn use Primitive to cut it open and blow up your opponent's board. But the good new grave effects aren't just the interruptions. God, I'm so fucking good at that. Longinophilia placing a counter is quite an easy way to get Byblisp revival off so you can easily get a material for Drago. Dracaena can revive Predapower so you can make him first and use him as the other material for Drago. And now the deck can make Predapower for pennies on the dollar thanks to Super Duper. Searchable with the Cobra, you can summon with Ambulo. Super Duper Polymerization not only lets you summon big expensive fusions like Predapower, but also lets you set up things like Chimera Rafflesia in grave for a follow-up Super Poly search. As a free agent, this card has also seen a decent bit of play in Lunalight and Branded. But one thing you'd hope it might do that it low-key kinda sucks at is make Wing Dragon. Make no mistake, Starving Venom Wing Dragon is a pretty okay card. It's a negate, a pop, and then if you kill it with Primitive, it lets Dragostopelia negate every single monster your opponent sets down. But making it means giving up Crystal Wing setup just to make Clear Wing and then fusing it with Ambulo or something, so now you're probably giving up another interruption somewhere. It's just a mess. And Super Duper doesn't really help because your fusion dragons are all dark, so Super Duper can't whip out the last Airbender over there. Meanwhile, if you're willing to use your synchro plays to make Clear Wing and then target it with Super Duper, now suddenly we're summoning Alligator Sword Dragon, and don't get me wrong, I'd love to. But it does seem like Konami realizes you might not be interested, which is why they gave Lilizard the effect to make Clear Wing dark. But wait a minute, where'd Lilizard go? Right, I just used it to make Clear Wing. Really, the longer you think about making this card, the more frustrated you're gonna get. Fairy Tail Match Giru can summon itself from hand or grave if you control a spellcaster with 1850 but locks you to spellcasters, searches a Fairy Tail back row on summon, and can pay 5 to change the name of an opponent's monster to Prince of the Fairies. Fairy Tail Ball searches a Fairy Tail monster or Tails on activation, lets your Fairy Tails attack directly, and when your opponent summons a monster while you control a Fairy Tail, you can negate a monster they control and change its name to Prince of the Fairies. Once upon a Fairy Tail summons a light Fairy Tail from hand, grave, and banish, but locks you to spellcasters, and if it's banished or sent to the grave, you can reset it, but you can only activate it if you control a Tail. Tails of the Fairy Tails is an Axe of Despair that can fusion summon a spellcaster using materials from hand or field, including Prince of the Fairies your opponent controls, and can equip itself from grave to a Fairy Tail, then immediately normal summon a spellcaster with 1850. Wickhead is a rank 4 of 2 spellcasters that protects your light Fairy Tails from all activated effects, can detach up to 2 materials to mill the same number of Fairy Tail cards, and as a quick effect can summon itself from grave, then sack a light Fairy Tail. Weaver of Fairy Tails is a fusion of a Tail and a spellcaster that can summon a Fairy Tail from deck or banished, can target a monster your opponent controls when she sees you summon a non-earth Fairy Tail to negate it and make it Prince of the Fairies, and turns all princes into spellcasters. And Teller of Fairy Tails is a fusion of a light Fairy Tail and a spellcaster that gives Fairy Tails battle protection, wipes your opponent's board and pings them for each card if it was summoned using Prince of the Fairies, and can negate and destroy an opponent's card or effect by banishing a Fairy Tail from hand or grave. Once upon a time, there were 5 Yu-Gi-Oh cards with cute references to princesses and shit, leaving them with silly, unrelated effects. Then they fucked up and made one of them good, so now people have memories and associations with the quote-unquote fairy tale archetype. So now in 2026 there has to be some attempt at making this archetype look like there was ever a plan. That's why the fusion spell has to be an equip spell so that Rella can pretend to be a starter. You're probably using your extra normal summon just to activate Luna more times, but I mean, why not, Rachka? See if it gets you anything. Can even be a spellcaster with 1850 attack.
You know how much we've wanted one of those?
Regardless, these cards do form a fairly consistent and cohesive deck, despite how little help they're getting from their forebears. Starting from the number 1 princess in the deck, you can search Match Giru for another level 4 material, and a search of the field spell to get another Luna in hand. And that Luna will be useful as the extra normal of Tails after milling it in a decent Lost ripoff with Wiccat. So from that simple opening, you get Ball and Weaver's name-changing negates, Luna or maybe Sleeper from deck with Weaver's effect, and once upon to at minimum summon back a Luna from grave, or from hand alongside Machigiru for follow-up. Himboifying your opponent's monsters does more than just mess with certain requirements and make them juicy spally targets. It also makes it so that Luna always gets to bounce, since there literally can't be a copy of Prince of the Fairies in your opponent's deck. Speaking of spally though, it is kinda rough not having a fully consistent way to tell her here, that being probably the most convincing disruption on display, being both an Omni-Negate and a way to banish a tail, so once upon can summon 3. You can do it by using Weaver to summon Rella and getting the soft once per turn equip back in play, but this requires specifically a spell discard, so we can't act like that's going to be happening every single game. And you know what else? Are we going to talk about it? Do you want to talk about it? This deck is absolutely begging for snow. I mean, it's a great Wickhat mill. When we talk about searching a random tail to fuse, name one you want in the grave more. When it comes to having to fuse one off at all, there currently isn't anything to do with the ones you put in grave except slot them into Once Upon as either the summon from grave or banished. Snow would be a second thing that could be done with putting a tail in grave. Once Upon also would love for there to be a card that on demand puts a tail in banished or banishes it from grave to trigger its reset. Wickhat can sack it from field to use multiple times. It's making me laugh my ass off how much this deck wishes it had the good fairy tale. Fuck you, Luna. I probably shouldn't say that. Half of my audience is named Luna. There are some other cool things you can do in spite of this big nerf to their ceiling. For one thing, there's a few ways to start your combos outside the traditional Stratos and Field spell. Because Weaver is a level 4, you can instant fusion to get her immediately and summon Machigiru from deck. But you can also mill Machigiru with Wickhat and use Ball and Tails to search an extra normal Luna, meaning any 2 level 4 spellcasters can make this combo work. Frequently in the OCG, this deck has been paired to some success with Magistus, being able to pivot in both directions via Wickhat to get to Tails, or Endymion plus Artemis to get to Varathragna. There are a few other spellcaster engines that have been folded into this deck in what some are calling a spellcaster soup type deck. Some of them aren't out yet, and if I didn't allude to them, you'd all bug me about why I didn't talk about them, while others require a bit more dedicated time. Spiritual Art Familiars is a familiar possessed card that searches a possessed back row or Ichirin on summon, can become any type or attribute, don't say it, don't think it, and if it's destroyed, can summon a spellcaster with 1500 defense from deck or grave. Possessed Destiny can target a monster on the field and summon the corresponding charmer or familiar possessed, then book the target, and can bash itself from grave to rotate a monster you control. And Charmer Quartet in Bloom is a generic Link 4 that gains 3 for each attribute on field, and once per face up can quick effect reborn 2 monsters with either the same type or the same attribute, but locks itself and those monsters from being used as material. I think Charmer is a psyop. I don't actually believe there's real human beings who are like Charmer fans. You, right now, the person who is supposedly mad that I'm saying this, I think you're not real. I think you are a plant, and I'm not afraid to say it. So I'll have some simple stuff to point out about the other 2 cards, like Familiars getting you to Des and then becoming any attributes, so you can summon any of the Awakenings, but probably Nefariouser because it's the good one. I don't want to talk about any of that shit. I'm going to talk about the Link 4. Being entirely generic, there's really all sorts of things you can do with 2 Reborns if you open your mind to other options beyond just summoning extra deck monsters. For example, summoning extra deck monsters. Under the Spellcaster locks in Fairy Tale, you can make Summon Sorceress and give your opponent the Fairy Tale you searched with the second Luna normal, and summon any spellcaster from deck, then link it off for Quartet, and bring it back unnegated. While the restriction keeps this pivot point from being too free, there's certain things you can do that Quartet doesn't restrict. Despite being a fusion monster, Demod's special summon is just a nondescript banish, so summoning pretty much whatever's your favorite level 6 or higher spellcaster will get you to Gaze. And this can include Diabellstar, who can get you to Ilia Sylvia by tributing with Deception, although if you're locked to spellcasters, you might have to make it with Deaders. Y'all fuck with Deaders. And of course, there's some floodgates you can pivot into in this manner, like Gravekeeper's Shaman or Cosmo Queen, who can trade Ball for Secret Village before going D mode. And it should go without saying that Quartet Reviving 2 lets you do all these things while also reviving a Luna or Weaver that you had to use as link material, guaranteeing one of them is Disruption and a tail name on board. Luna has particularly good synergy with Summon Sorc since she can bounce the tail you gave your opponent back to your hand, provided you haven't randomly walked into a Fairy Tale mirror. Night Train Blue Traveler can pitch itself to search either Train Connection or Revolving Switchyard, and once per duel can lift itself and another machine out of the grave and onto the board. Heavy Armored Knight Babbledecker can be normal summon without tributing, with no terms or conditions. You just can. On summon can summon an Earth Machine from hand, and if your opponent activated a card or effect during your turn, he can turn himself into any rank 10 Earth Machine. Convex Knight can summon itself if there's a machine on board, then become the same level as a machine, and can mill an Earth Machine, then gain attack. Exceptional Schedule searches either Special or Urgent Schedule, then gives your opponent a token, and can banish itself from grave to sack a card you control and reborn a level 10 machine. Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Flying Launcher is a generic rank 10 that searches an Earth Machine or Barrage Blast on summon, gives you an extra normal of a machine, Machine and can detach materials to pop the same number of back row. And Super Dreadnought Railcane and Gustav Rocket is a rank 10 you can put down on top of Gustav Max by discarding a card that can negate a monster effect and destroy it while it has material, then dome your opponent for 1,000, and must detach a material during the end phase or fucking die. These cards fix a lot of the issues that have long plagued Earth Machine, giving them better enablers and payoffs, and even making it a lot easier to weave in combo pieces that didn't perfectly fit in the deck's game plan before. Take for example Urgent Schedule, an extremely good card, but only fit for going second in a world that's become increasingly hostile to the very concept. Now with Exceptional Schedule, you can give your opponent a cardboard cutout of a monster so you can resolve your double E-Telly going first. And with Blue Traveler, you get to make use of those bodies even more effectively, as you can link it off with the Recycler and then immediately revive them to use Recycler's effect. And what better link to make right before summoning 2 monsters at once than Genius, another great piece of machine support that until now didn't have much of a solid position in your lines. Even Recycler itself now works better as a starter since it can mill Traveler, turn into Knight, come back with Traveler, and mill Babbledecker, which is small enough to be revived with Knight while still being a 10 to overlay into Flying Dildos. And of course, Traveler does a lot more than just the revive. Having Switch Art as a guaranteed part of your combo lets you easily weave in things like Pegasus and Dairy Crane without having to use your Riverstormer search on them. And you can also search Train Connection.
Who am I? Why am I here?
Babbledecker is a fantastic extender threatening to counteract the tempo lost from a 1-for-1 hand trap by turning into Flying Dildos on his own, or give you a good floor into a stronger hand trap by turning into Gustav. Even just shitting a guy from hand onto the board on summon can give you some unexpected advantage to play through things. And Flying Dildos, I'm not going to stop calling it that, Flying Dildos either gives you what's functionally a second Riverstormer search, or can give you another interesting layer of disruption in Barrage Blast, potentially a good play into a Charmy. But also getting an Earth Machine search on a rank 10, and thus not yet needing to be under Brutal Dozer's Earth Machine lock, gives you more room to play around with making Harvester and Recycler into CDI. The extra normal contributes to this, letting you normal Harvester and Babble on the same turn, or at least normal one of them and Recycler starts. And of course, if you need any more reason to want to build towards the rank 10 aspect of the deck, Gustav Rocket is a great new piece for the end board with drawbacks that, while already reasonable, can be mitigated in some cool ways. The discard required to summon him isn't ideal, but you can take it as an opportunity to pitch Clockwork. Generally, you won't have to worry about him running out of materials and dying in the end phase, but if you attach Goliath to him, you can ignore that maintenance cost altogether. If I had to say where I think this deck still falls short though, honestly it's just that despite how big all the monsters are, the board still feels kinda small. And that's fine. The big boards scare me. No, I'm not saying that the 5,000 attack is compensating for something. It's just that boards of Regulus, Gustav, maybe CDI or Superdora, and then Tunneler draws. This is a funny story. I actually have an Infinitrack Tunneler signed by Gage, because in 2022 I thought that the tunnel meme from Prague was going to be funny forever, and now I look like a genius because I was completely correct. Anyway, with highly concentrated disruptions like that, you'll need to be more discerning with where you fire them off to actually stop your opponent. So the size of this deck's board doesn't matter, it's what you do with it. And if nothing else can be said about what this wave of support does for you, at the very least, you get to cut the fucking box. Because that card is penis. Laying around. Breach Boral Dragon is a link 2 of Dark Dragons, including a rocket that searches a Boral back row on summon, and Quick Effect points at a guy, and so help me God, if that guy is not there when this chain resolves, I will summon a rocket from deck. Really good addition to Rocket, especially as far as extra card in the following set goes. Makes Reboot and Regenerator searchable so you can guarantee a spell negate or bring back a rocket to target. While its effect does beg and plead with you on its fucking knees to use the gimmick, you can also do shit like target Tracer and have it chain to kill itself to get both summons from deck, which is similar to using a regular rocket quickie, but doesn't get cucked by every chainable under the sun. Rahamu, Envoy of the Sacred Tomes, is a generic link 2 Dark Fairy that gives you a free pass to normal without tributing. Quick Effect normal summons a big dark monster, and during the end phase can bottom any number of monsters from hand to draw that many. Maybe this card is a can of worms we don't really have time for, being a generic link that can quickly normal a whole bunch of monsters that are maybe supposed to be difficult to normal. But don't worry, the worst thing we found so far is Christia. In Dark Lord, you can use either your Condemned search or one of your banishment searches on Asmodeus, and then shit him out of the hand for free so you can mill K-Dot, who I was under the impression didn't fuck with these guys. Like, that's op. What do you think of that one? Like, the reverse of that's oomph. That's op. Pimpy son op. You revive it with Chucky Finster. I got distracted and forgot to mention that. This is supposed to be a lightning round. I think it's best for everyone if I just keep pretending the Junk Warrior support doesn't exist until they force me at gunpoint. Mimigul Flower can give itself to your opponent or to you if there's a set monster on board, and if it's flipped up, gives the opposing player a search for a flip monster or Mimigul card, then hops the fence. Fine card for the deck, more of a proactive thing to do with your flip effects on turn 1 than just using Archfiend to hand rip or Slime to summon what's usually just going to be a random body. Even though it does open up your possibilities a lot, I don't really think you're branching out to other flip monsters with that that effect. Diabrocken, the Ominous Spectre, is actually not very good. I guess you could call it a fire hand trap for Vol, but come on. The reason I'm bringing it up is actually because it has that nice ox sound in the name that we can do a lot with. Just keep it in mind. Flame Tongue! You finally made it! Snake Eye is right over there playing hopscotch with Rescue Ace. Why don't you go get a juice box and let the adults talk? Your little brother's already there. Dark Seraphim Irisfil is a generic rank 8 you can slap down on any Xyz monster that hasn't used its effect this turn, gives all Xyz attack equal to their rank times 100 on summon, and can detach to stop itself from dying. I guess you can call this a sort of all-purpose Zeus pilot. For whatever rank you're on, you don't have to think too hard on an Xyz that'll survive battle, just send in Iris and show your opponent that every board's meant to be broken. There is that one purpose for making anything into a rank 8, but that guy's not out yet. I only made a short about it because, I mean, you know, we all wanted some of that overframe free candy. That shit did like 30,000. Fata Dragna is a Wind Dragon fusion. They're in my walls. The effect's really good, I gotta leave that to the professionals, but I wanted to talk about how, given that it's my job to nitpick archetypes, I really notice on premiere reveal day when they drop hot fixes to the most random fucking ones I can think of. I'm still not making Wing Dragon. Probably. Maybe. No. Yes. No. Maybe. Officiator of Doom Samuel is a generic rank 6 that can quick effect detach material to reborn a zombie, then negate a monster with less attack. And if it hits the grave, can shuffle a monster from either grave. Hey! This guy's really good. I mean, like, I'm actually really impressed here. Sadly, no time for reverie.
You too, you're great.
But this is a really good card for the rank 6 zombie strat. Like Call itself, this card is a way to quickly revive big zombies like Mammoth and Snakehair to not only use their effects to take an opponent's monster out of rotation, but also negate that monster at a much more versatile speed. With Mammoth's 2200, you can apply that negation to the majority of normal summons, but of course it gets even better as you mix this particular zombie engine with others, so you can use things like Felgrand to negate anything under 2800 and then banish it. Not bad, silly Samuel. I might have to take you seriously. Dominus Spark is a trap you can activate from hand if your opponent has used an effect in hand or grave this turn that can banish an opponent's monster, then if you have no traps in grave, lets them replace it with a monster from hand, then locks you out of the 4 elements for the duel. We fell for it again. For the second time, Konami has revealed the Dominus for all the bad attributes, and we've all thought, oh, how interesting, a good card for underpowered decks. And then 3 months later, they reveal the good one for the good attributes. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me... Well, you can't get fooled again. While this may not be Impulse, Spark pretty much improves on everything about Spiral. Banishing is effective removal on far more things your opponent could have on board than bouncing, and a monster from hand is far less of a refund than a monster from grave. In grave, they could get back a material they used to make the monster you bounced, meanwhile the best monsters that could be in hand are generally the extenders with which your opponent would already be attempting to play through your disruptions. If anything, making them summon it now might deprive them of some advantage tied to summoning such a monster. The only downside is that it is the most restrictive Dominus, cutting you down to only light and dark. And divine, I guess. A deck like Yummy can use all their archetypal cards, but you'll get locked out of things like Marcher that Purge was always fine with. And if you use both it and Purge in a single game, you'll be left all alone with just lights. And divine. Are we playing Sphere mode? Is that what we're gonna do? Solemn Accusation is a counter trap you can activate the turn it's set by revealing another set trap, that negates a spell or trap card by either paying 15 to destroy it and prohibit it for the turn, or paying 3k to banish it and all copies from your opponent's hand and deck.
Uh-oh, this shit ain't good.
Like its world-famous predecessors that have defined not only formats or design tropes, but really the way the game is played altogether, this card bolsters your turn 1 board with protection from all manner of breakers that even goes the extra mile to stop any further attempts at using whichever one they sided in. While quite a lot of spell and traps have once per turn clauses that leave open the ability to use another copy if their activation is negated, Accusation covers for that by blanking any other copies in your opponent's hand with the first effect. But if what you're worried about is the long game, like more copies being searched and used later on, the second effect can remove that piece from the game entirely. Obviously, this can be devastating against Radiant Typhoon by taking away the heart and soul of the deck, but can also do things like take away all 3 Rahus, forcing your opponent to use their traps aggressively for recursion, or make do with the one of Ketu. Against a card like Fallen and the Virtuous, banishing the other copies can stop your opponent from setting the second one in the end phase, and then there's the other factor, which is its use the turn that it's set. As you may know, trap cards are bad, so decks don't play a whole lot of them. But if you want to use this card as a form of protection on turn 1, you can make it work by pretty much mirroring the type of cards you're trying to stop. If you want to protect your combo from Imperm or a Dominus, you can set this card alongside Imperm or a Dominus. Trying to use it the same way going second, however, is probably ill-advised. While it can stop back row-based endboard pieces up to and including counter traps, the hand traps you'd want to set to enable it are, well, hand traps that you probably would have liked to use to stop your opponent in the first place. Saving them is just trading that one interaction point with potentially the entire rest of their board you otherwise could have halted. So while this card has built into it the theoretical capacity to be used going second, it's hard to deny that its true purpose is still to be set going first and make your turn 1 even stronger. This card has seen a fair amount of play in the OCG and may even do slightly better in the West given that we only have 1 judgment rather than 2. Miscellaneous lore update. You know, this is a little unprecedented, but I think we gotta do this one all at once. Elfnote Regina can quick effect send another Elfnote card from hand or field to summon herself, summons an Elfnote from deck when she's summoned to the center, and when she's synced off can come back to hand. Nervedo, the Shade Beast Power Patron, is a pendulum that's always treated as an art mage, can banish the top 3 face down and destroy itself to summon Nerva for free, summons a patron or art mage from deck when it hits the face up extra, and in the scale can quietly negate a monster effect chained to the activation of an art mage or patron, then destroy itself. Jupredo is always treated as a Dooms, can banish 3 and die to summon Jupiter, searches a patron or Doom's back row when it goes to the extra, and in the scale can destroy itself and another Doom's or patron to pop a card on the field. Junoldo is an Elfnote that can cheat out Junora, recurs a patron or elf when it goes to the extra, and in the scale can draw 2 and discard 1, then destroy itself when you summon an Elfnote or patron. Vidolium, the Unstable Power Patron of Unity, is a dark fairy that can destroy itself from the scale to either summon a patron from hand or grave, or boost all level 12 patrons by 5k this turn, can only be summoned by returning a Fusion Synchronic Seize to the extra, banishes the whole grave face down on summon, is unaffected by monster effects, and searches a patron card when he ends up in the extra. Prohibited Power Patron Portal Terminus mills a patron, then searches a dark fairy, and if your patron battles, you can banish it from grave to banish the opponent's monster face down. Plundered Power Patron Plating Vidulia is a field spell that can reveal a patron from extra and banish a card from hand to search or summon a monster that mentions it, drains your opponent's board by 100 for each banished card, and locks them out of using effects in grave while you control Nerva, Jupiter, and Junora. Doom's Command Adrastea is an equip spell that gives the equipped monster an extra life, can kill the bastard to summon a Dooms from hand, grave, or banished, and can equip itself from grave to a monster you control, but ding you for 100 times the level. Archmage Impasta Recapture is a counter trap that can be activated the turn it's set if you control an Archmage that can negate a monster effect and destroy it by temporarily banishing a fusion you control, then bounce the whole back row if you control 3 or more types. And Doom's Over Greflario is a rank 5 you can slap on a Doom's Xyz that can detach a material to search a Doom's back row, then destroy a card, and when it's destroyed can summon a Dooms from deck or grave. So first of all, it's unlikely that a sort of pure power patron deck is going to materialize out of the support. As amusing as the whole Omega Glendios vibe of dropping down a field of unrelated boss monsters might be, the Dweller effect is only an okay payoff for that. The best play they do have access to is using your easily accessible 10s to make Varudras, but if anything, that's more going to be a buff to one of the decks this engine can slot into. And slot into them it does, since Terminus can search Medius and Vidolium can search back and forth with Terminus. With Vidolium, you can reborn the patron that you milled with Terminus, but if you draw him, his other effect does let you kill him for no reason, so you can search. And since Terminus is also searchable with Jupredo, you can access this part of the engine midway through a combo, especially in Dooms, where there's now multiple ways to get to Jupredo. For one thing, Greflario is like precisely what I've been talking about when I've said this deck has lacked a way to build outwards. Every card is traded one for one into the next, leaving you with no options but to funnel into the one tall guy. Now you can make an Xyz, for example, through Alara searching command and tagging in Deactorus, and immediately make Greflario, who lets you branch into 2 directions. His spell Trap Search can grab Raiders for a summon from deck, but destroying him with Raiders will trigger his own float effect, netting you a second monster from deck. That lets you do things like summon Amalt and Patron, pop the Patron with command to bring back Alara, and make either UDF or Sargass for a negate with the level 4s on board, while still having the Amalt and Patron searches in hand. And with those, you can now much more easily do the trick shot of activating Change, and chaining the bestowed Doomdurg effect to pop it, so on a new chain you can trigger both Destruction to equip a Jupredo from deck, and Change to add that Destruction back to hand. And now popping Jupredo can bridge you into more of that Patron engine, so you can summon one from grave with Vidolium, and one from deck with Vidolia to make Varudras. But the Patron engine also gives you more starters with Terminus that either get you directly to Vidolium to reborn the weird dragon thingy, or to Medius, who can now also search Vidolium. Meanwhile, over on the Archmage side, Medius has a new weird bird thingy he can get you to in Nervedo. As a high-level Archmage, Nervedo can tag directly into Nonfinito at the cost of a spell in hand, triggering both its own effect to summon a major patron from deck, and Finito's effect to set Recapture. As an Archmage fusion, Nonfinito already fulfills the requirements of Recapture to be used on turn 1, meaning that the deck finally has a convincing answer to Nibiru. If you go directly from Medius to Nervedo without Terminus or Vidolium involved, you can even set this up before doing any searches, so you can stop Droll. Alongside extra copies of Nervedo being scalable to block stuff like Ash and Bell, this support makes Archmage far more robust to hand traps. And having a buff this huge coming right after the deck won some sort of Make-A-Wish tournament in, I'm being serious here, the single worst city I've ever been to in my entire life. I went there twice for the Team YCS, and both times my takeaway was that the city has like an actual evil aura emanating from it. Like Satan himself must live there or something. What are we talking about?
Oh, yes. In the pit of despair.
One of these decks can play Harmonia, so we're talking about that now. While Jedasis doesn't have quite as proactive of an effect as his bros, he does give you a nifty little draw 2 in hands that lead with Terminus that you can conserve until the very end of the combo after running through all the bricks. Popping him from the scale that way will also let you add back an elf you summoned from deck, so you can summon it back out with its own procedure, giving you an extra body you otherwise wouldn't have. Regina, on the other hand, goes a lot further to support the deck, giving it more extension and a new layer of interaction in the hand. On turn 1, you can search her with Lucina and summon her over the Lucina to get to, what is this thing even, a peacock? Or if you've been there, done that this turn, she can summon Tinia. And then later in the turn, when she's sunk with Patron into Strelitzia, or maybe something cool like Dragster or Level Lazeball, whatever the case, she'll come back to the hand so that on your opponent's turn, you can summon her over an elf you've already used to summon another bird from deck, and with Strelitzia's level decreasing reborn, have a consistent way to make Junora. But of course, as a quick effect in hand, with a cost that can be paid from hand, Regina also gives you an alright turn 0 play by summoning herself to the center and Lucina from deck for a bounce. Between Regina and Harmonia as hand traps, and Jedasis getting to shit out Junora for free to dark rule of the board, Elfnote has really improved on the going second front, while also improving its going first plays. As a result, this deck has fit pretty comfortably into the position of second best Harmonia deck, which has pretty consistently kept it hovering around the third best deck in the format, finally giving this lore arc one real success story, and setting the groundwork for what honestly looks like more to come. I'm also contractually obligated to mention that Terminus searches Dark Lords. I don't have the spoons for a conclusion sentence, I'm just leaving. Oh, also GMX still sucks. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it!